This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
I belong to a few hospice groups on Facebook, and I just see people are so desperate for information. They just want to know. They're like, wait, this is happening to my mom. Is this normal? And why? I don't understand. Why isn't someone telling them? Or they need information. You know, like when we were pregnant, we had that book, What to Expect When You're Expecting.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. Dr. Kaishauna Guidry, host of the Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare podcast, is my guest today. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care. Listen, you're going to need to fasten on your wig, put on your seatbelt, and get ready for this woman. We had an amazing conversation. I think she and I were separated at birth. I love this lady. Dr. Kaishauna Guidry is a California-based mobile physician. She has experience as a hospice medical director, in addition to having a private mobile practice called Morning Dove Medical. We're going to be talking about that and what that means and the services she provides. She's also the host of Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare podcast. So she is a podcaster too. She's got a book called Dr. G's Hospice Pocket Guide, the 7 Things Hospice Physicians Need to Know to Be Ready for Work. And her most recent book is called The Real Deal About Hospice, short stories highlighting the advantages of hospice care for patients and families. This woman is an advocate and a mentor. She is awesome. You're going to hear the story of how she became interested in hospice early on in medical school, how she became interested in caring for people with serious illness and at end of life. She started Morning Dove Medical to serve patients who had graduated from hospice, patients who had been discharged off because they no longer qualified. Her friends will tell you that she's someone who keeps it real and that she can have the difficult conversations. And I think that's what makes her good at what she does. Morning Dove Medical focuses on serving people who have been discharged from hospice and or palliative care. It's a mobile practice that visits people wherever they call home. And of course, the big part of their mission is education. Super important. Dr. G is going to be talking with me about how it impacts patients and their caregivers to be discharged from hospice, how losing those services can negatively impact quality of life and what they're doing. She's also going to share how it impacts the hospice team, because believe it or not, it does impact us. So get ready, because you're going to really love this lady. Here's my conversation with Dr. G. Dr. G, it's so good to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
It's so good to meet you, Helen, my favorite person.
I can already tell we are going to get into trouble with this conversation. It's going to be so good. We've been chatting for 10 or 15 minutes already. It's going to be really good.
They can't hear that conversation. That's the private conversation.
Right. With all the shenanigans in it. Okay, so I do have a question for you, just to get my listeners to know you a little bit better and for me to know you a little bit better. So here's the question. I hear you're a Rams fan. So is this a casual thing or is it a full out obsession?
So if you have the video on, you would see I have this, so I'm ready. This bracelet with the Los Angeles Rams logo,
Oh my word.
just in case I'm not wearing a t-shirt or a hoodie or have my keychain, I can always put my wrist up. Like Deion Sanders' son put his wrist up.
Oh my gosh. So you have to have some kind of identification is what you're telling me?
I support my team. I grew up not having a football team. And so I said, whoever goes to to LA. I was in medical school, by the way, when this all went down. And so there was a discussion between the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Rams. 3 of them are going to Los Angeles. I said, whoever goes, that's my team. So when it dropped, I went on Amazon and got everything.
So are you one of these people that go to the game and they paint their faces and
No, I'm there. I'm Dr. Mama K. I actually just bought a jersey customized with Dr. Mama K on the back, my Twitter handle.
I'm
a normal person there. I'm a normal person there, but it's just fun, to be a part of something. My husband and I have season tickets, and it's just a hobby that we do now that we're empty nesters. We can't go to every game. Sometimes we sell them, but it's fun to have a team, besides my college, UCLA. Are you a Cowgirl or a Texan or what? Are you one?
I'm going to take some grief for this for people. I am not a football fan. I'm not a sports person.
That's all right.
Yeah. Although, the Houston Astros, that's a big thing here. A huge thing.
Okay. Yes.
And my mother, who's almost 91, even watches the Astros. And she tries to tell me about the game. And I'm like, that's really nice, but I don't care. There are not too many people around here that would say that in Texas because we really are pretty proud of the Astros. It's pretty cool stuff. So
hey, that's America's pastime. So
yeah.
We'll go with that.
So now my listeners have gotten a little bit of glimpse into your psyche. Yes, with your obsession with the LA Rams. So let's talk about the business stuff. Let's get down to what we really came to talk to. Hospice care and end-of-life care, palliative care. And you're doing some great stuff through Morning Dove, and we're going to be talking more about that. But how, as a physician, did you even find your way to working in this silo of healthcare?
Wow. So my medical school, Texas A&M.
Yay.
Yay, Aggies. Am I supposed to say whoop? It's hard to know all the things because I went for medical school, not undergrad. So I didn't get fully indoctrinated.
Right.
I just got a little bit indoctrinated. But anyway, I am an Aggie doc. And so while I was there, the first year of medical school, they introduced us to the idea of performing a difficult conversation with a standardized patient. First year of medical school. I don't know if people know this, but the first 2 years of medical school, you're literally studying all day. Imagine finals week in college. That's every day of med school, every single day. And so some days we would have a standardized patient. And so they told us, hey, this patient has heart failure. Go in there and tell them, I don't remember the details, but we had to go just raw into the room, cold into the room and tell them how things are going to be and talk about palliative care. And so that was the seed. Then during the humanities component of the curriculum, they started talking to us about palliative care. And I learned that the director, they were involved in hospices in the community. And so that's why it was important. And also that was during the time when we were having a huge crisis in healthcare. Well, we're always having a crisis in healthcare, but
right.
With the uninsured Americans, remember that time?
Yes.
2012, 2013, that's when all this is happening. And so they were talking to us about people utilizing their 75% of their Medicare funds for the last 6 months of life or however many months, and the quality of life wasn't there. And we needed to start talking to them about palliative care. I didn't buy it. I didn't know what it was. So I went on a journey of learning what it was through my 4 years of medical school. And then fast forward to the 4th year of medical school, I went through a journey of discovering what palliative care was. And by that time, I had bought in and decided that I wanted to test my desire and my capacity to go into the field. So I took a palliative medicine rotation that was with, he was actually the internal medicine clerkship director. And also he was medical director for a hospice in the community, and actually a national one. And so during that 4th year, I was able to stand in it. And that's how I knew I could do it. Right. Before, it was an idea that I rejected 1st year of medical school. 3rd year of medical school, when I saw the chronic diseases during my internal medicine rotation, and saw, that people end up being hospitalized. They end up in and out of the hospital. There's times when some of our treatments do not fix them, like Barbara Garnes talked to us about on my podcast recently. We can't fix it. And so what are we going to do? And funny thing, like, I always have a sign to help me go in the right direction. While I was on my 4th year palliative medicine rotation, I went and did a ride along with a hospice nurse, an RN who was doing an admission. And I always look at the photos, I didn't know what was going on. I was just saying, what's up with this house? That was a patient I had on my internal medicine rotation.
Oh, really?
What are the odds?
Wow.
What are the odds? So that was like, okay, how am I in this man's house?
Yeah.
And he was my patient when I was like over a year ago. And so that was something. And so while I was in the 4th year elective, there was a real traumatic thing that happened. A patient actually coded during dialysis, and the family was there. And so you can imagine all the, chaos and trauma occurring. I gravitated to the family and, the people there to stand with them. And in my mind, I knew, okay, I can do this. I am supposed to be their rock. So that's where it happened. So then graduated from medical school, came back to California, did some electives in residency, and internal medicine residency. And then when I was in residency, I got lucky. There was a small mom and pop hospice that needed a medical director. And it was, I had interfaced with one of their marketers in the hospital previously, because I was doing the referrals in the hospital. Like, I was doing the palliative consults. I was having the conversations because I knew I was comfortable by then, because it was introduced to me in medical school. So I was doing the consults, just like you'll do a cardiology consult, a pulmonology consult, and a nephrology consult, and a neurology consult. If someone is at the end of life, or someone has a serious illness that can't be cured, then you should be doing a palliative consult. And so they needed help, and I said yes. And so I was able to jump right in to this hospice and work and learn everything. I feel like that was my fellowship. And then I went to another hospice and did a lot of work there. I was the community palliative care medical director, and then did all the face-to-faces for the hospice, and also grew a lot, did a lot of programming, created systems like pathways of care. That's when Morning Dove was born, because I needed to have a place for patients that graduated from hospice. A lot of people, when they are discharged for extended prognosis, can't go back to the primary care doctor. So they're bedbound. They need a home visit doctor, a mobile physician is what we call it. And so I created Morning Dove for that reason initially. And so I did that. Hospice Medical Director Certification Board. Then I moved to a larger company and continue to do education with Morning Dove. That's my passion, to help the community understand what we do above anything else. And I can't do it one door at a time. So that's why I have the podcast in the books because we need more people to know. So
Yeah.
that's Morning Dove. And that's how I got to hospice.
Well, let's touch back on something. You said that in that first year of medical school that you were told to go in, the assignment was for each student to go in and have a cold conversation about end of life, that kind of thing. So when you had that conversation back in that first year of medical school, did you feel comfortable in that space? Did you feel comfy, even though you didn't pursue it until later on? But did you feel like maybe you had some sort of skill set there that you wanted to tap into?
I do think I did. So I'm a non-traditional medical student. That's how they categorize old people. So before I came to medical school, I was serving the community. I was a married mother of 3 in my late 30s when I started medical school. So I had been a teacher. I had been in PTA, been on the board for Pop Warner, the cheer mom, Bible study leader. I mean, I've been in the community taking care of people and being a stay-at-home mom. So, and been to many funerals, obviously, dealt with death. So it wasn't completely foreign. I saw it as just being honest. People who know me, they know that I keep it real. So I just have the courage to walk through it with people. Even if I don't know something, someone has to be there to help them. And so that's me.
Right. I love the way you think about that. Somebody has to be there. And why shouldn't it be you?
Mm-hmm.
If you are comfortable in that space, because a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
Tell me about the services that you're providing at Morning Dove Medical. What are you doing there?
So, clinical wise, so it's services for individuals, teams, and organizations. So, on the individual level, I can be your mobile doc at home and see the certain population that are not palliative and not, I'm not going to see you, Helen, like you're too active, but people who are,
That's sad.
you guys are too demanding. I don't have time for that. So I'm just kidding. No, folks who are homebound and they can't get to their doctor visits, and those type of patients, they're not on palliative. They may be on home health or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or they may have been discharged from hospice for extended prognosis. I can be there for them. I also work with some organizations to help with a 602. It's a form in California that seniors need before they move into a residential care facility for the elderly. It's just seeing where their health is, what their ADLs are, and their medications. And it has to be signed by a physician. So I do that one and done assessment for people and fill out the form so they can move into a memory care or an independent living or assisted living or in their community. For teams, I help small hospice agencies, not too many at a time because who could do that? But for the past couple years, I've had a hospice agency where I'm their backup. They have a small census in the 20s. And so here and there, their medical director may be on vacation, so I'll cover a call. So that's through Morning Dove. And then on the organizational level, I am doing education and offering physician enrichment so that organizations can help their non-hospice physicians have these conversations, or organizations that need to improve their hospice physician documentation, not necessarily the regulatory piece, but just knowing what's required. Right. The things that I highlighted in my pocket guidebook. Just helping them understand what the role of the hospice physician is. The basic role, the basic foundational things that you need to do when you show up on the first day. That's what I'm doing. And then I have the podcast so that there's a library of information to empower anyone who can find it. And I have the 2 books because, again, that's important so that people can have the information. So that's what Morning Dove is about, education and empowerment.
I love it. I love it. So I want to dive deeper into one piece that you're doing at Morning Dove, and that is seeing these patients that have come off of hospice because they have been discharged for extended prognosis. So for my listeners, extended prognosis means there's no longer a 6-month life expectancy. The patient isn't expected to die within 6 months. The prognosis, how long they're going to live, is longer than that. So they don't meet Medicare criteria anymore to stay on hospice. And so they're discharged off. We do have a tendency to call it graduating from hospice, but I've come to sort of not like that term because it sounds like it's something to be celebrated. It's great. And I don't know that for patients that have come to rely on the care that's coming to them through the hospice team and for their caregivers, I don't know that it's a really great piece of news for them to receive because it sort of pulls the rug out underneath their care. So let's talk about that. What do you think the impact is on these patients and their caregivers when they've been told that the hospice service is going to stop?
Yeah, I'm with you on the graduation word. So I think now that I understand that, actually, Lisa and I had a discussion from the death deck about that. And I think that more is an inward facing word. But I'm going to have to come up with something else for the actual people, because I don't think we don't walk in there with the class of 2023 t-shirt, and say,
congratulations.
bye.
Yes.
No.
Here's your award.
No. We don't do that. It's actually a different process, but the impact is very challenging. It has an impact on the patient and family and the team. I have had my hospice aide on one of my teams. He is super vocal and he will just go off and say, "Doctor, if we do this, this is going to happen." And I mean, he just,
yeah.
He talks about how he's been taking soup to one of them. And if they don't have this, they are not going to be here. And we can't just leave them and they're going to die because anyway, so we have very robust conversations. So it's a challenge for the team to let go of that person. The teams love these patients. And I don't mean that in an unprofessional way, but your show is called The Heart of Hospice for a reason, right? It's difficult. And then there's some grief associated with that separation. And then the patients and families agree. I agree with what you said about pulling the rug from under them. Where are they going to get these services? Are they now going to have to go figure out a hospital bed, go to the pharmacy now and wait in line for medications?
Yeah.
They don't know. So it has a huge impact on them. And so that's why I created Morning Dove, to soften that blow and to have a seamless process for it where they wouldn't lose anything, where I would be there and make it okay. But there aren't a lot of Dr. G's around. So
yeah, there are not a lot of people doing that.
Yeah.
Basically, what it comes down to is the patient's status and their needs have not changed. And I've had those same conversations with other team members, because the first thing that comes out is if we discharge them, she won't have anybody to help bathe them, and they won't have this particular resource or this support that we're providing. And what I always said to come back to is the regulations don't say that. The regulations, the criteria for staying on hospice doesn't include all of those things that we do and that we want to be able to give our patients and their caregivers, their families. I mean, it's compassion and compliance. And they're really headbutting. It's hard to work in a quantifiable way, but we're talking about quality of life. And so those things get mixed up. And a lot of times we want so much to take care of these people, but the regulations say you can't.
Yeah, I've had some difficult conversations, trying to talk to a family member about how they think their parent is doing. And recently a conversation didn't go well because they were so taken off guard. They didn't like my questions. From my end, I was trying to be collaborative and just kind of get a sense of what they were thinking to let them know what may happen to, just to keep the communication open. But it just sent them into a panic and it upset them. It's very, very difficult. And since I work for a larger company, I don't have to make that decision on my own. I can take the data to a committee and then they decide. But it's not like that everywhere. Some hospices, they're just dropping people left and right, and then the next hospice picks them up. Especially here in California, we think we have more hospices in California than the whole country, or 1/4 of them are here.
Yeah.
And so, you if a hospice is trying to be compliant and discharge for extended prognosis, then the next one is just going to pick them up. And we get those all the time.
It's very disheartening. So Texas has the same challenge that California has. We have a glut of hospice agencies here, and it's extremely competitive. So when a patient is discharged off, yes, sometimes another hospice agency will pick them up. But what we know about that is it's going to come back to bite you eventually, just not right now. And it's really hard to see that. What they see is, here's another patient we can pick up and the patient looks appropriate. Yes, but the patient hasn't had any decline in the last 6 months or the last year. And that's why we're discharging. So it gets really complicated. And, I don't do too much regulatory stuff here on the podcast. That's not my goal, right? We are the heart of hospice. But I think there is some grief and some fear that the caregiver experiences when you say, hey, this is great news, right? Mom's doing great. She's stabilized. She's improved some. She hasn't had anything happen in the last however many months, so we need to discharge her off. And that's when the discharge planning comes in. And agencies aren't really good about doing that. We don't do psychosocial discharge planning like we should. That falls into the social worker and the chaplain. I think it's super important to get that caregiver feeling comfy and supported. And then the nurse and the physician are taking care of the medical part, the nursing part of things. But we don't always discharge these people so they're comfortable. So Morning Dove, as a mobile physician, you are helping ease that transition so that they don't feel like the bottom's dropped out.
Yes.
So what do you do for patients that have come off of hospice? What services do you provide?
So let's say they're being discharged for extended prognosis. We may put them on home health initially just to get whatever DME they may need. I'll see them, order their medications, just follow them once a month, typically, and for symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah. So you actually go out and make a home visit once a month.
Oh, yeah. That's my jam. I like going to visits. I heard that doctors don't do the visits, which is odd to me.
A lot of them don't. And we've even moved away from doing that for face-to-face visits. A lot of agencies use nurse practitioners to do those in-person visits. We were doing telehealth, but the in-person visits that we have to recertify a patient and keep them qualified for hospice. But so you like the bedside thing, huh?
Well, that's why I got into this. It's some companies I know we use nurse practitioners for the face-to-face visits, but for the actual, if someone becomes my patient, I'm seeing them. I want to meet them. Just recently I had a patient, private, mobile patient. It was her birthday. I took her a cupcake.
Oh, see, this is the compassion part. This is the compassion part of healthcare that I don't think we often enough tap into, because I think it's our why. It's why did you get into this in the first place? To connect with people, to provide empathic care. I think that is our why. It goes all the way back. So what would you say holds the most meaning for you as a physician in those interactions?
My goodness. To the point of what you said about the heart of it. First of all, I love what you said about compassion and compliance.
It's like oil and water.
I told my team after one of the teammates, they took the death of one of our patients really hard. Now, we, of course, have compassion for all of them, but some of them hit harder,
Sure.
especially if they've been on for a while. And so this particular teammate was crying, and you don't expect this one to cry. So we just held space for them. And eventually, as it kept going, then I started crying. I said, see, when I cry, I don't stop. But then one of the other teammates said, hey, you made Dr. G cry. And I said, when I stop crying, I quit this job.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing that's most meaningful to me is that the love and the family bonds that I'm able to observe. You know, every culture in our country is different, right? But the thing that unifies families is their love. And so I've said before that we create those loving environments, or we actually remove the barriers that are inhibiting them, you know, the psychosocial things, the trauma that the family has had from being in and out of the hospital, the sisters and brothers that are fighting, the spouse that's taken this hard, the finances that are not financing. And so seeing that and supporting that is what's most meaningful to me. And it's so sacred to walk into someone's home and be in their world. And each one is important. So even though I'm comfortable and I'm being a rock and all the hospice people are awesome, you know, this is new every time. This is their fresh disaster. And so I treat it like that every single time. And so again, when I don't feel that, I'm done with this.
Yeah. I love that attitude. That's awesome. So what do you find yourself most challenged by? This work is hard. What challenged you the most as a person, not as a physician?
I'm annoyed by the late referrals. Like, I know that's a physician, but I'm a person too. I just feel like, why are you waiting until the last minute to tell these people about hospice? And then we have to come and do our hospice magic, which we do. But this is terrible. Like, I don't like the poor communication. I hate administrative redundancy, like the silos that you mentioned. Like, I feel the frustration of the family and the daughter and all the people that have suffered from our healthcare system because of the poor communication. That's why I call my podcast The Heart of Healthcare, because I believe hospice is the heart of healthcare. It is. We make it beat. We make life beat, but they don't know about us. Like 18 days stay, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, short length of stay is a huge problem in our industry.
And it's not just for us, right? Because, you know, all this talk about money and profits and nonprofits, that is not what I'm talking about, people. So don't go there. It's about the care that the people need. One situation's popping in my mind. You know, I'm very forward if people haven't gotten that yet, but it's because of I've been in hundreds of homes in California. And there are times when I've been like given a family member time to make a decision, and then I find out that person dies. So I treat every encounter with someone who I see is dying like it's the last. Right. And I have to make their decision maker, their primary caregiver, whoever, understand what we're seeing so they don't miss the opportunity. Like the last time I didn't do it, it was a couple years ago, but it was a patient, you know, been in the hospital for weeks, for sepsis, had ALS, and their sibling, you know, brought them home because that was their wish. You know, my sibling wants to be home. I want them home. So I'm doing a telehealth visit just like this. And I said, let's talk on Monday, you know, and follow up, watch this podcast. I had a different podcast then, but kind of similar, to help this person understand what hospice care is. They didn't want to, you know, sometimes people say, no, I'll just do palliative. I don't want hospice.
Right.
Well, that's what happened. And Monday, that person had died. And that family member called the office for support, for care, all the things we do when someone dies, how we have the mortuary set up, the chaplain comes in, the nurse does the care for the body. You don't have to deal with the coroner, just all the things that hospice does, we couldn't do. And it was so bad. And I was like, this is not happening again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't coerce anyone to do it, right? But I'm going to help them see the urgency of getting end of life health care.
Well, and I think what you're hitting on is these courageous conversations, which is actually the theme for National Hospice and Palliative Care Month from NHPCO, is having these courageous conversations. Because, okay, so we know the patients and the caregivers that entrust their care to us, they're courageous. We understand what it takes to take on a terminal illness and end of life and face those issues. But there are also thousands of courageous hospice professionals, end-of-life workers, having those conversations with the families. So my podcast got started because of that. I wish we had known. And I got so tired of hearing that. So tired of hearing that. I wish we had known we could have done this sooner. I wish we had known that hospice did this. I wish we had known that pain management was provided. I wish we had known sooner. And it's a failing. It's a failing to have those courageous conversations, because what I think is throughout healthcare, all through that continuum, that word that we like to use, right? It's supposed to be a conveyor belt type transitional journey through the healthcare system, through all the seasons of our aging lives, and it's not. Because there are too many stops and starts where we are not willing to have these courageous conversations. They're hard. They are hard to have.
That's why I want to help people. So I believe it starts with the physician. So on World Hospice Day this year, World Hospice and Palliative Care Day, I talked to Barbara Carnes, our pioneer, about this problem and asked her, what does she want physicians to know? What does she want us to do so we can fix this? Because it starts with us, right? They don't come to us. They're in your office, your primary care doctors. They're at the oncologist. They're at the pulmonologist. You went to medical school. You know what's going to happen. So we need to bridge that information, and the person should know. For dialysis, like, my teams have care conferences with families about that because they want to start it up again. And I'm like, wait, did they tell you how long this would be? I'm not saying one of my colleagues didn't do it, but the people seem to not know.
And what you're referring to is the fact that dialysis only is effective for a certain number of years. You can't say 30 years from now you'll still be on dialysis and healthy. But somebody should have told them that.
Right. And someone should have told the person who I experienced in medical school that maybe it wasn't a good idea to do that.
Yeah.
Because that person died and it was a total traumatic disaster for that family.
Let's face it, it's not in the best interest of our patients or their caregivers for us to shrink away from having these hard conversations. If you're saying, do no harm, heal, provide support, be compassionate, then learn to have those courageous conversations. And if you don't feel comfortable, there are 1,000 people out there that can teach you and train you and support you as you learn. Because even people who are really good at it get uncomfortable. Those conversations are just hard. People like Lisa Paul, she's a hospice social worker. She's an emergency room social worker and the co-creator of the Death Deck. It's hard to tell people hard things. And it doesn't make us feel good. We don't walk out of there and it's like, yeah, we just did this. What we walk out with is, man, I just crushed these people.
I
Yeah.
have visceral reactions. Like I feel like you talking about it is making my heart beat fast.
Yeah.
I feel
We
nervous.
feel this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We don't just walk through the day like there's nothing going on and it doesn't affect us. But isn't that the beauty of what we do? Isn't that the heart? We talk about the heart and the science that goes into hospice. That's the heart of it.
Yes, we're actual human beings. We're being human with them.
Yeah.
The human experience, what we do, we can do anywhere, and without any equipment.
Yeah. Because if you bring your heart, you lead with your heart, the compliance and all of that will follow, is my thinking. That's my hope anyway, because it's so hard to be compliant. It truly is. So tell my listeners about your podcast, where to find it, and where to find your books as well.
Wow. So my podcast is Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare. It's on YouTube if you want to see the video. Uncut version. I don't necessarily edit that one. So you can watch it there starting at episodes 9 and 10. For season 1, I didn't have video before, but before episode 9, but I do have it forward. So I just wrapped up season 1 on World Hospice and Palliative Care Day. So you can find it on YouTube and wherever you watch podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Bullhorn. It's out there. And then my books. My first book, Dr. G's Hospice Pocket Guide, 7 Things Hospice Physicians Need to Know to Be Ready for Work. That's on Amazon, or you can buy it directly from the Morning Dove Medical website. And I'm actually allowing a promotion. If you buy it directly from me, you'll be entered in my book club. That's where I have an educational community for people who are going through the book. So that's the first book for hospice physicians. The latest book, which I announced on World Hospice Day and co-authored with Sharon Harris, an LVN and end-of-life doula. It's called The Real Deal About Hospice. And it's short stories that highlight the advantages of hospice care for patients and families. So that one, today, the day of this recording, is only available for pre-order on the website, and you will be automatically placed into the book club. Again, a learning community for folks to go through their journey of learning about the various diseases covered in each chapter. By the time this airs, it may be on Amazon. It is going to be on Amazon soon, and so they can buy it from there. But I recommend the book club. You know, I belong to a few hospice groups on Facebook, and I just see people are so desperate for information. They just want to know. They're like, wait, this is happening to my mom. Is this normal? And why? I don't understand. Why isn't someone telling them? Or they need information. You know, like when we were pregnant, we had that book, What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Right.
We need something like that. I think The Real Deal is something like that because it's not scary. It's more comfortable. It's casual. It's the way that I talk so that the people feel empowered and educated to navigate their journey, just like my podcast, same mission. So that's where they are.
Wonderful. So tell me your website.
My website is Morning Dove Medical. Don't forget the U. It's morning as in mourning the loss, or the mourning dove bird. That's a popular bird in our country. So MOURNING dovemedical.com. And I'm also on every social media platform allowed. And you'll be able to find me there. Purple, the little purple bird, because that's my favorite color. And if you listen to my first podcast, you'll hear about the experience of me and mourning doves and why I named my corporation that.
I love it. Dr. G, I love your energy. I love your heart. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
I'm so glad to be here with my sunflower dress with our flower, right?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
what a great interview, and what an advocate's heart she has, not just for patients and families, but for the industry, for the quality of the care we're providing, and for her colleagues. So you can find Dr. Guidry at morningdovemedical.com, and remember, it's morning, MOURNING, Dove Medical. And you can also find her podcast, Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare, on all the major platforms. And you can also find her on social media. So check it out. There's a purple dove for her logo. It's very easy to recognize. So connect with Dr. G, see the work that she's doing. You're going to be encouraged and inspired. Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com, and don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram, and send your questions or comments by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.